Great to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out for the program today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My
So,
pleasure. My pleasure.
so before we get into your work and your world, I want to know this. 6 years ago, this pandemic was changing everything. How did you get
Mhm.
through it, and how has it changed the way that you approach work today?
The way I got through it, as trite as it sounds, is through mindset. In fact, my book title, One Move Makes All the Difference, came from one move of thought I had in the very beginning throes of the pandemic. And truthfully, it was not allowing the external to influence my internal thinking as best I could, because that didn't happen on every single day. But it literally had everything to do with keeping hope in my brain that at some point we're going to get through this, because in history, in challenging times, we've always made it to the other side. It just depended on when. So.
So let's get into exactly the work that you're doing on a daily basis. And to do that, I'm going to put you in front of 13-year-olds. It's career day, and they just want to know what you do for a living. How do you explain and synthesize that?
Sure. So if I were talking to 13-year-olds, I would say, well, I stand up in front of people and I talk to them about my work. I work with teams and companies, and then I also work with people one-on-one. Whether I'm speaking in front of people, their teams, or one-on-one, it's always around the same idea. And the idea is that our thoughts drive our emotions that create our actions that ultimately manifest the results of our lives. And so oftentimes in our lives, we're interacting or we're experiencing things in the outside world, outside meaning outside of our head. And it's our interpretations or how we look at those things that actually influence how we actually act and be either successful or be frustrated. So that's what I do.
So, what did you want to be when you were a kid? When you were 12 or 13, what was your dream job?
That's a good question. I think it went back and forth. By the time I was 16, it was being a dentist. But earlier than that, I do remember drawing. Like I thought I wanted to be an architect potentially. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, how did this happen? Take me back to where you were born and raised. What were the seeds that were planted that gave you this business acumen, that gave you this notion of helping people get to a better place? How did this happen?
It came out of trauma, frankly, defined trauma I learned many years later. So, as I just shared, from the time I was 16, I wanted to be a dentist. It was actually an idea that my cousin planted in my head, who was in medical school. And where he went to medical school, the dental students were with them for the first 2 years. And so I ended up getting a job in a dental office, and that solidified my interest. But what then happened was 10 years in, I became medically disabled from practicing dentistry. I had problems with my hand. So I was actually out of work for 17 months.
Wow.
And this was in 2003, before the internet, what it is today. So go try to find a job when you're in your mid 30s, where you're, too young for this, too old for that, too experienced for this, too inexperienced for that. And so it was hell. And so through a lot of networking, over the next 20 years, I ended up having positions in the business side of dentistry. So they just happened to be selling dental stuff, but it was all business and leadership. So I worked in a dental laboratory. I worked for a dental products company where I was responsible for a 20 plus $1 million budget. And then I worked for the largest continuing education firm for dentists in the world, helping to build that business as well. So my acumen for leadership came very much out of experience. And so, people sometimes look at me and go, well, how's a dentist doing this stuff? It's like, well, that's what my degree is. But ironically enough, the majority of my working career has been in executive leadership and coaching, if you will.
What was the earliest example of leadership that you saw that impelled you? I know when I was a kid, it was presidents after disasters or different dignitaries, but in your
Mhm.
life, what were those conscious or subconscious seeds that were planted that gave you that idea of what good leadership is?
I was my father, plain and simple. My father was not a dentist. He ended his career as president of engineering at Pratt& Whitney, one of the largest jet engine manufacturers in the world. And I will never forget this story that he shared with me, that when he got to Pratt& Whitney, the engineers and the manufacturing folk didn't really talk much. And he went down to the floor to observe things, i.e., see how the designs were being manufactured. And it was like the second coming because never did the president of engineering ever come down to the manufacturing floor. And so that was one of my first real wonderful lessons in leadership about just communication. If you think about it, that's what that was in many ways.
So, who's been your inspirational force in your career to evolve to this point, to find what your footing is after you thought you were going to get into the dental world? Who has that been for you?
Couple different people. I think one was Justin Patton. He is a speaker and an author. He was actually my first coach and has become a dear friend. And through coaching, which is really why I became one, he helped me realize that that's kind of what I wanted to do, if you will. And he's an extraordinary speaker and has really helped me from a business side as well. Um, Similar in those areas are two women, Jen Barley and Karen Sullivan. That's where I got my emotional intelligence and team facilitation certifications. But they ended up having a mastermind group called the Eggheads. And we met for quite a number of years. And I've met some dear friends through there and just really taught me a lot about how to facilitate programs and how to just kind of go with the flow. Like I'm at a point now, and if you told me this 10 years ago, I would have looked at you like I'm crazy, like you were crazy. But I'm at a point now where if I'm at a workshop and things go sideways, I'm like, bring it on. And so that's not the way it used to be, that's for sure. Yeah.
So, if you could meet anybody alive right now on the planet that has a solid business sense about them, leadership, just someone that's fascinating that you could talk to that might help you on your journey, who would you love to talk to?
Um, it's actually not a business person, it's a thought leader.
Okay.
Um, so it would be Dr. Viktor Frankl. And Dr. Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And a quote that's been attributed to him is actually the cornerstone of all of my work. And so it has to be Frankl, period. Um, I'll just share with you real quick. It's not a long quote. The quote is this: between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space lies our freedom to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. That's where the team framework came from. That's the way I live my life. That's where the concept of everything that happens is neutral. It's our thoughts that give it power comes from. So it would be Frankel, hands down. Yeah.
So in this line of coaching of helping people get to a better place, what's been one of the best client success stories, best feedback that you've gotten?
I I'll give you a quote that I actually use in my materials. One of my first clients, actually, in the workshop facilitation space, not in the coaching space, he said to me, "You know, our challenges are still there, but we know how to handle them differently now."
Yeah.
And so, if that doesn't express the Frankel quote, I don't know what does.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So let me ask you this. What gets you up every day to do this work that you do? You're not just doing something that's
Hmm.
like producing like, something that's not drenched in human behavior and human
Yeah.
emotion. You're getting into heavy stuff. What is
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
motivation for you every day to do it at a high level? Take care of your soul and to continue to evolve as a human.
Because I know in my soul the work I'm doing is not only ubiquitous, but it works. I'll give you two examples of that. Most of my clients are still within dentistry, but I just spoke at a tech conference in Fort Lauderdale last week, and the global vice president of cloud and AI for IBM was there, and the mayors of Fort Lauderdale and Miami were there. This was like a big deal, and the response I got, the reactions I got, the comments I got to my keynote on using optimism as a strategic tool were the same as anywhere else I go. And so I know I've landed on something universal. And one specific comment that I got that keeps me going and gets me up in the morning was a woman who came up to me at the American Association of Endodontists National Conference. If you don't know, endodontists are the root canal people.
Yeah.
And she comes up to me after I gave basically the same keynote I gave at the tech conference, but obviously with a different slant. She said, not only was that the best keynote I've ever seen at this conference, you just gave me the skills to deal with my daughter's stage 4 brain cancer diagnosis.
Wow.
So if that doesn't get you up in the morning, I don't know what will.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So,
yeah.
in regards to seeing somebody on a stage deliver a speech, what's the most powerful, memorable speech you've ever witnessed?
I got to tell you, my buddy Justin's amazing.
Yeah,
Just his transparency, his authenticity, and his energy. Somebody I really strive for. The other person actually is Dr. Frank Spear.
yeah.
So Dr. Spear is a rock star within dentistry. His name is on the building for Spear Education, and he's an extraordinary speaker. And he has this ability to not only be humble, but to break things down into simple to understand concepts, even when we're talking about very complex and comprehensive subjects. And so his methodologies and the way he delivers is quite extraordinary, frankly.
There was one point in my life, a dentist said one of the most important things that I'd ever heard. I had had some chronic issues growing up with cavities and
Hmm.
whatnot. And I remember I asked him at one point, I was like, what is the most important thing about taking care of your oral hygiene? And
Hmm.
he looked at me and he said, if I was to be dropped off on a desert island and I was asked to have one thing to take care of my mouth, I would take dental floss. And I never
Yeah.
forgot that. That was it. Of all
Yeah.
of the people that have given me sage
Yeah.
advice, I always remember that dude saying dental floss. That's it.
That's interesting. Yeah, because you could use other things to make a toothbrush out of, but dental floss is hard to mimic. Yeah.
But that's the one thing that gets
Yeah.
all gummed up in your
Yeah.
mouth that you got to
Yeah. That's
extract,
funny.
you know.
That's funny.
So let's say with all of these pivots that you've had in your life and career, that you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you walked up and there was a film projector, and you hit play and it was a 60-second highlight reel of the life you've lived. Would
Hmm.
that young version of you believe your life turned out this way?
Oh, hell no. Mm-mm. No, 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 not in a million years. I was much more reserved. I'll use the word shy back then. I mean, the idea that my happy place is in front of a room full of people
Yeah.
um, is very interesting to me. And truthfully, I do believe that we're all exactly where we need to be, and it's our journey in life that gets us to wherever it is we are. And so I actually, what you described as kind of some people call retrospective journaling. It's a technique actually, and so I use it in my coaching practice as well. But the you can't get to where you are today without the journey, and so it can be very humbling to think back relative to where you've come. I often talk about a concept called success amnesia, and it's about discounting the small steps that get you to the big places. And so, at the end of every year, I always take time to reflect on what happened this year, and I just kind of open my mind and start. Vomiting on the page, if you will, with a pen and paper. And it's pretty amazing when you open your mind and not judge. Well, that wasn't a big deal. No, no, no. It was a positive step. And by the time you're done, you've got two, three, four, 5 pages, depending on the year. And that is also a very humbling thing, just to look back on 12 months, frankly. So
So let's say you walked into a room um, of everybody that's known you in a business sense throughout your career, and you walk up to a podium and you can tell them one fun story about you, maybe a seminal moment, a first concert, a sporting experience, traveling somewhere that was wonderful, jumping out of an airplane, outrunning a bear, a fun story that would shed a little bit more light, a little bit more human light on who you are. What story, fun story would you tell that room?
that's a good question. A fun story about who I am,
Yeah,
if I'm
yeah,
hearing um, you know, uh, when I was in third grade, I was in the choir. Everybody was. It was
yeah.
mandatory. And I'm not a very tall man. And so I was on the one of the upper bleachers at this performance in the gym, and the whole school was there, and parents were there too. And you got to picture this. It was kind of like a squared off U, if you will,
Yeah.
shape, the bleachers. And the performance finished, and I was walking to get off the bleachers, and I wasn't looking where I was going, and I fell off the bleachers backwards
Oh no.
and landed behind the bleachers.
Oh no.
And that happened in a blur, but I remember hearing the whole crowd go, and I was fine, nothing happened. But I just got up and kept going.
That's
And
awesome.
honestly, that's me in my life. I've had a lot of things happen to me between disablement and then when I got my first job in a dental laboratory a couple years later, I got fired because a big lab bought the small lab. By the way, today they hire me to do webinars, which is kind of fun. Um,
Karma.
and then a couple years, and then you had the Great Recession, and then you had the pandemic, and some other things that have happened in my life, many of which I write about in my book, One Move Makes All the Difference, including almost being murdered by a Mexican drug cartel in Cancun, which is not an exaggeration. That's a true story. So I've always just gotten up,
Yeah.
and I think that's a fun story. That's really me, frankly.
That is wonderful because at that point in your life, with your cognition at that age, to
Yeah,
hear the sounds and then to recoup, it shows
yeah,
your true character and grit.
yeah.
So let me ask you this: of everything that you've done, everything that you've evolved to and become and overcome, what are you the proudest of?
My marriage.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've been with my husband for 30 years.
yeah,
And it hasn't been easy.
yeah,
Societally, personally,
yep.
just in general, any relationship of that length is not easy. But honestly, people often ask, "What's your secret?" And it's the same answer. It's communication,
Uh-huh.
because relationships are relationships. It just depends on what type it is, but at the very core, how we communicate, the transparency with which we do, and how we get out of our own way in our mind. Because, when I work with teams all the time, we create what's called an alliance. Like, what kind of place do we want to show up to every day? How are we going to show up when there are challenges? And how are we going to keep each other accountable? And the truth of the matter is if you come in the morning and your coworker, Susie or Bobby, doesn't say good morning in their typical fashion and you start making stuff up in your head, well, how's that working for you? And so, and that could be transferred to, platonic relationships, intimate relationships, etc. So it's all the same stuff. It's just different people.
Yep,
So.
absolutely. So at the end of the day, Martin, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I'm a guy that's been through a lot of crap and come out the other side. And I'm in my mid 50s now, and I'm very proud of what I've been able to do and how I've been able to get up and dust myself off and move forward and take risks. Um, because honestly, there's a lot of things. You know the iceberg illusion.
Yeah,
Are you familiar with that?
absolutely.
Okay, so for those that may not be familiar, picture an iceberg, but you're looking at it kind of like in cross section. So you see the iceberg above the ocean and below the ocean. And the idea is the stuff above the waterline is what everybody sees, your quote success, your life, your whatever. But below the waterline is all the failures and all that stuff. I just went to this tech conference and I was looking to launch this product about around group coaching, right? And these people don't know me,
Yeah,
and nobody bought it. And I'm like, okay, well that's fine. What did I learn from this?
yeah,
And so, I look at failure as an opportunity, and I don't even like the word failure, frankly. I just like the word. I just look at it rather as, well, it didn't work. Okay, fine.
yep,
Let's figure something else out and move forward. But all the work I did to launch that group is still there, right? Because it was interesting because a couple people came up to me and said, have you done this before? And I wanted to chuckle because I'm like, I've been coaching for decades.
yeah,
And I had to then take a step back and go, okay, Martin, you're new to this room.
yeah.
They loved your keynote. You have the evaluations to prove it. You have the testimonials to prove it. But that's the next step. That's the next layer. And so it made me think. And it was a good learning lesson.
So if anybody's ready for the next step, they want to reach out, they want to hire you, ask
Yep.
questions, any of the good business, where do they go?
My website has everything. So you could just look up my name. So it's martinmendelson.com. It has information on my book. It has information on my keynotes, my workshops, my courses. I have an online course there. There's links to purchase my book, One Move Makes All the Difference, because it's available wherever books are sold, including Audible and ebook. I get that question every time. And so everything's on my website. If you want to connect with me on socials, I'm a big LinkedIn guy, as well as on Instagram. On Instagram, my handle is Doc Martin Empowers.
Okay.
So,
I will put all these links in the show notes. Martin, what a joy. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time today. I'm glad we connected, and best of
yeah,
luck with everything. I appreciate it.
thanks so much.
Yes, sir.